Hello everybody, it's Foxy speaking, and welcome to another episode of Foxy's Fun Inspirational Chats. And today I will be your host. And in this episode, this is another episode of the Croatian holiday, future Croatian holiday, well, future fictional Croatian holiday. Myself, David Scott, and lovely Sue Vecchio undertake, which is set for, say, roughly 2027 or 2028 before the Eastbourne Magnificent Motors event of either 2027 or 2028. Say about a week or so, or a few short days before, something like that. But around about those lines, something like that. And we had already gone into our hotels by this point. I was in my hotel, already unloaded all my luggage in my hotel room, as did David almost likely, and quite likely Sue almost certainly. Got out a little bag with me in case I needed to do some shopping, in case there was a nice shop that sold something nice and interesting. And also David, and also got out my camera recorder, which I'd taken with me the whole time, or it was in my coat pocket, even though I had to check it through security, putting it on a tray and all that, before I could put it back into the camera pocket. No, to the coat pocket, sorry. And so yes, I'd more or less organised and sorted out everything I had to put to one side, whilst for the entirety of my Croatian holiday, well, not just mine, but David and Sue as well, the holiday. This is the second part of the story. Once that was all done, I decided to go out again. So I got the telephone and alerted David and Sue that I'd unloaded everything and was getting organised for our exploring excursion of Zagreb in Croatia, where we'd be exploring the many sites of Croatia, the certain points of interest, and also having a ride on the various transportation systems that were present over in Croatia itself. No, Zagreb, Croatia itself. Even though many said Zagreb, I think Zagreb is a far nicer and better expression of that, for referral to the Croatian capital city, as we know. Lovely Zagreb. Okay, so I left the hotel room. I should be back a little later on, I said at the reception. Luckily they were all right. And once I left the hotel building, I met up with David and Sue. David and Sue were happy when they saw me. Right, I said as I clapped my hands to David and Sue, shall we begin exploring the fine city of Zagreb in Croatia, and having some rides on the transportation systems that are to be seen in Croatia? The lovely Sue said, "Oh yes, Foxy, I'm ready for the excursion whenever you are." "Oh yes, yeah. I'm ready whenever you and Sue are, mate," David said in response. And so we began exploring Zagreb in Croatia, which involved generally mostly walking, and as well as taking certain videos of the various streets of Zagreb, but we were just careful as to what we took videos of with our camera recorders and all that. We even did luckily ask some people, even foreign tourists, to take our photographs for us. And luckily some were more than kind enough to oblige, and did so without fuss. So yes. And sorry if I got a little lost with words, but once our photographs were taken by the various tourists, we continued with our excursion. We even took a look at one of the old Zagreb churches, which had some very nice vintage architectural landscaping, which certainly did bring the attention to myself, David and Sue, almost certainly. The next day we were planning on visiting some nice museums in Zagreb the very next day, but we thought on the very day we arrived in Zagreb that we would just walk around Zagreb and take videos of whatever transportation system there is, and as well as riding on the various transportation system. And then the next day go into some nice museums and other very nice points of interest in Zagreb the very next day, and then possibly within the next day or so travel into some other parts outside of Zagreb, but going further out of Zagreb into other interesting places in Croatia, and as well as going over to the residence of the Nyx Potato owners, and to visit Nyx Potato the cats themselves, or Nyx Potato the kitties, or Nyx Potato the lovely fine kitties, as lovely Sue would like to refer to them as we all know it. So, as we began exploring, we found a wonderful zone to take some various videos of the various transportation systems that could be seen over in Zagreb in Croatia. And this spot was seeing not just buses and certain interesting looking taxi cab vehicles, but also I think there are trams that can be seen over in Croatia as well, I would think. So we saw, it's almost quite likely there'd be trams, so let's say we saw some trams, and we also saw some lots of buses and some interesting looking taxis as well, which certainly did bring the attention and interest to myself, David, and lovely Sue. And so we got our cameras out and decided to take some videos of whatever transport we could see in Zagreb in Croatia. We took some videos, and goodness, I thought I was in heaven because of all the all the different transporting options and systems there were to be seen over in Zagreb in Croatia. Sue, on the other hand, although she took video, she could very much feel my thoughts, as she sometimes does like to point out whenever I've taken a bus or a train or a video that's featuring a car rally or a vintage event and all that, or if it was a video of myself and David working on a Gavioli 87 key fairground organ, or a Richter, or Mortier, or other Gavioli, or possibly Liberaire fairground organ, or amongst those lines, or that, you know, of certain institutions, or speaking of which, of such. So, we took as many videos as we could, and we were certainly gonna, I think almost likely Sue was gonna edit it and get it uploaded onto YouTube once she got back to the United States of America. But since I'd taken my laptop with me, I was obviously going to edit it in the very, very evening and get it uploaded much later on into the evening. And I think Croatia, their time difference is around about 1 hour ahead compared to the United Kingdom, I would imagine. That's my rough estimation and certain things. So I had to check the time, sorry, but never mind. So yes. And obviously, once our exploring and Zagreb, Croatia, Zagreb excursion was over, we were to be meeting up with the owners of Nyx Potato at an Italian restaurant in Zagreb, as well as also meeting up with Debby Framzese, who was to be joining them in the Italian restaurant. So yes, and Debby Framzese, on the other hand, was sleeping over at the residence of the Nyx Potato owners. So she'd had not just the company of Nyx Potato, the cats themselves, and the entertainment provided from Nyx Potato themselves, but also had the pleasure and privilege of spending much time with the owners of Nyx Potato, the lovely Englishman who's the husband and the lovely Croatian lady who's the lovely wife. Oh yes. Roughly half an hour had passed of taking photographed pictures and videos of the various transportation systems in Zagreb and Croatia, and then we began riding on one of the Zagreb bus routes, which took us around various parts of Zagreb, all that. Although I don't really know the Zagreb bus system connection very well, but I'm sure they have various interesting bus routes that take you all across certain parts and various parts of Zagreb. I'm sure the owners of Nyx Potato would very much evidently point this out. Or if any of you have been to Zagreb in Croatia before, I'm sure some of you could point this out to me, since I've never been to Zagreb in Croatia, just to say, though have been to foreign countries in my lifetime, but never once been to Croatia, just to point out. Whilst we were on the bus, before we were going to take any videos, Sue ended up FaceTiming her house sitter who was looking after her cat Harriet. And whilst she was FaceTiming the house sitter put Harriet onto her. "Meow," said Harriet to Sue. "Hi, Harriet," Sue said in excitement. "Look who's here." And then Sue pointed her telephone over to myself and David, and we both said, "Hi, hello there, Harriet," I said, waving to Harriet. "Oh, hello, Harriet," David said. "Oh, hello. Oh, aren't you a cute little one? You're a beautiful little girl, like Foxy's beautiful Daphne and streamlined, slinky, lovely Nixie," as David said. "Oh, Foxy's cats Daphne and Nixie are beautiful," as David said, giving a similar impression to what I've sometimes done in the past whenever making friendly descriptions about someone's nice appearance, but not in a bad way, but in a nice way of friendly compliments and all that. Or compliments of courteous sincerity and all the rest of it. And so yes. And after about 5 or so minutes of FaceTiming had passed, both Sue, myself and David all said goodbye to Harriet, and then Sue began talking to the house sitter for about another minute. They exchanged their friendly goodbyes, and Sue promised to keep in touch with the house sitter and Harriet within the next day, whilst she was still on her holiday. Over half an hour or an hour or so had passed. We got off the bus and began exploring much more of Zagreb in Croatia by foot, walking around, and then we went back into our hotel rooms, even though we were not staying in the same hotel room. David went back to his youth hostel, Sue went back to her hotel room, and I went back to my hotel room. And then we did our own thing in the hotel. And then before long, it was time to go out to dinner with the owners of Nyx Potato. And so I jumped in, so what I did was I got into the shower. I had a little shower just to make sure things are okay, and just to make sure we were okay for the evening. Even if we were okay, we just did it just to thoroughly make sure and all that. Just to thoroughly make sure and everything. And yes, and then I got changed out of my certain clothes I was wearing, although I was wearing the same trousers, but not in the shower. Obviously I'd taken them off before getting into the shower. I was wearing the same trousers as I had done before, so a black pair of trousers, but I changed my shoes from slip-on shoes to black brogues to go out for the nice evening, although I do sometimes casually wear brogues from time to time, and changed my socks to a nicer pair of socks, and put on a white shirt, and put on a tie, and I'd also put on a cardigan, though it was a fairly medium, not lightweight, but reasonably medium weight cardigan, so that because it was reasonably cold over in Zagreb. And once I'd gotten ready, I put my coat back on and walked out of the hotel room and walked my way to the Italian restaurant in Zagreb in Croatia. After about 20 or so minutes of walking, I'd found the restaurant, and there was David and Sue walking out of a Zagreb taxi cab vehicle, and they were waving to me as they decided to take a taxi to the restaurant, whereas I decided to take a walk. But it's okay, certainly no critical remarks intended on that. "Hi, Foxy," Sue said. "Hello, Sue," I said. "It's goodness you are looking lovely." "Oh, thank you, Foxy," she said, and then came over to me and gave me a gentle kiss. "Oh, my goodness, you are looking very pretty and extremely lovely," David said. Sue giggled at David's remark and gave him a kiss as a thanking gesture for his friendly compliments. "You two are just so kind. You are very kind, aren't you?" Sue said. "Now, I think it's time to eat out and have a nice meal with the owners of Nyx Potato." I said. "Yes, Foxy," David said. "And don't forget Debby Framzese as well," Sue said. "Oh, yes, don't forget Debby Framzese, Foxy," David said as a reminder. "Oh, yes, don't worry, I know she'll be in, but my apologies for not mentioning her," I said, assuring them that I had not forgotten that Debby Framzese was to be joining us as well. And so after we'd spoken, as we walked towards the Italian restaurant before the big entry doors, there, standing outside, were the owners of Nyx Potato and Debby Framzese herself. "Hello, Foxy, Sue, David," said the friendly husband. It's good to see you." "Hello," I said to the owner as we shook hands and gave each other a nice friendly hug. Sue shook the husband's hand and gave him a nice gentle hug and a kiss to him. And David shook hands with the owner of the friendly Englishman. And we also said hello to the lovely Croatian wife, and as well as exchanging our greetings towards lovely Debby Framzese. Debby Framzese was very happy and excited to have met both myself, David Scott, and lovely Sue Vecchio. "Hello all," Debby said happily. "It's nice to see you finally in person," she said. "And it's wonderful seeing you too, Debby lovely," I said in response, agreeing to her point. "Shall we have our Italian meal now?" I asked. Yes, I'm ready to have it when you are," Debby said. And so myself, David Scott, the lovely Sue Vecchio, Debby Framzese, and the owners of Nyx Potato walked inside the Italian restaurant in Zagreb in Croatia. And there we found our table, which the owners of Nyx Potato had booked especially for us. And so we sat down on our table. I sat opposite to the lovely wife, and David sat, he sat next to me, and lovely Sue sat next to David. So David was sat in the middle, sitting opposite the friendly Englishman who was the husband, and the lovely Sue Vecchio was sitting opposite Debby Framzese on the other end of the table. I was sitting on the right-hand side end of the table. I was sitting on the left-hand side end of the table, sitting opposite the lovely wife, who's the lovely Croatian lady, and David was sitting opposite the friendly husband, who both of whom are respectively the owners of Nyx Potato, the friendly Englishman and the lovely Croatian lady. And obviously, but myself and David are not the owners of Nyx Potato, to make a complete assurance. And the lovely Sue Vecchio was sitting opposite the lovely Debby Framzese. And so, as we settled in our seats, the friendly waiter came over. And the waiter, although the waiter was Italian, he namely spoke both Italian and Croatian, but namely Croatian. But fortunately, the Croatian lady is very fluent in her native Croatian language, as well as also being very fluent in English as well. So, myself, David Scott, Sue Vecchio and Debby Framzese all said what we wanted for our starters. So, speaking in Croatian to the waiter at the Italian restaurant, the lovely Croatian lady ordered our starters for us, since she was the only one in the room really able to speak Croatian. And so the waiter got out his notebook and his pen and started writing everything down. And then she also ordered a few bottles of wine for us to have with the meal. The Italian waiter wrote all of this down and then proceeded over to the kitchen to give the orders to the chefs in the big main kitchens. As we were waiting, the Italian waiter had passed over our wines and informed us that the starters were in the process of being made and should come reasonably soon. And luckily we were waiting for it, so we knew what to do as a means of waiting patiently for our meal. And so we chatted and had some friendly conversations and all that. But David had a very curious question, as well as Sue. "Oh, do you two live in Zagreb in Croatia?" Sue asked to the owners of Nyx Potato. "No, Sue, we do not live in Zagreb, just to say," said the husband. "It's something Foxy once came under the impression back in 2023 that we lived in Zagreb in Croatia. We live not too far from it. We're not far and we're fairly nearby to Croatia, but we do not actually live in Croatia," said the husband. "We do like Zagreb very much," said the lovely Croatian lady. "It's like my home city since I'm from Croatia, as lots of you already know." No. Foxy did tell me lots of times that you, the lovely wife, and who are the friendly couple who look after Nyx Potato, and as well as help feeding the stray cats, that you're originally Croatian, as it's your native nationality, though fluent in English and Croatian, David said. "But yes," he said, "but what you do with Nyx Potato, and as well as the stray cats," David said, you just do a wonderful job looking after them, as the stray ones really did not deserve the homelessness." "I completely agree, David," I said. "The homeless stray cats certainly did absolutely nothing to deserve the homelessness, but it's such a wonderful thing that the owners of Nyx Potato here do such a wonderful job helping them within their full reach of power." Sue completely agreed. I was actually about to ask if whether or not you two live in Zagreb, but now I've found out the answer, Sue said. Not to worry, Sue. Now you know already. And Foxy knows already too, as he has done since 2023. He knows full well that we do not live in Zagreb in Croatia. And as we chatted, before long, our starters came. All 6 starters came along, but then a few more plates came along too, of some extra additional starters. We were surprised with the extra additional starters as well. We decided to order a little bit more, said the lovely Croatian lady. It's a special occasion as we've never eaten out all together before, but we thought we'd do it in celebration since you've came over to visit us in Croatia. That was very nice and lovely of you, I said to the lovely Croatian lady. Thank you, both of you. Oh, it's quite all right, Foxy, said the owner, who's the friendly husband. Yeah, no, I thank you very, very much, you two. Thank you, good sir, and thank you, my good lady, said David to the couple, being the owners of Nyx Potato. No, I thank you very much as well, Sue said. And I thank you very, very much too as well, said Debby Framzese. And we thank you, Foxy, David, Sue and Debbie, for accepting our invite to the Italian restaurant. Well, it was Foxy's idea to eat out at an Italian restaurant, for whatever one we could find in Zagreb in Croatia, but we're thankful we were able to do it, so thank you all of you. And the husband poured over some red wine into our wine glasses. Cheers! We all said, and we clinked our glasses and drank some red wine, and as we drank our red wine we began eating our starters. It took some time to complete the starters as there was a lot of food amongst us, but as it was a special occasion we decided to overeat nonetheless. We had completed the starters, and once our starters were completed, we decided to wait for the waiter to come again, as he was busy dealing with other customers who had come into the restaurant, as it was quite busy, the Italian restaurant in Zagreb in Croatia, when we went. And before long the waiter arrived, and we decided to order our main meals. But again, the lovely Croatian lady, the lovely wife, ordered our main course meals, for us in Croatian, since we could not speak the language, sadly, though we really should have learnt it beforehand, before we came over. So the waiter once again got out his notebook and pen and wrote down our orders. And once he wrote down our orders, he walked over to the kitchen to give the chefs the order, so that to let us know as to what we wanted and what for the table number we were sitting at. And as we waited for our main meals, we began to have some chats and then decided to pinch some more red wine. And then, cheers, we said, and we clinked our red wine glasses together and drank some wine. And we decided to continue drinking a little bit. But there were 2 bottles between us, a red wine bottle and a rosé bottle. And before long, as we poured the last of the red wine, which used up the bottle, between the 6 of us, our main meals arrived as we decided to have our wine, the last of the wine bottle, with our main course meals. Once all our main course meals arrived, we raised our wine glasses, saying cheers, clinked them together, took a drink of red wine, drank up our red wine, and then began eating up our main course meals. We'd finished off our main course meals, and then we decided to have some rosé, as it was a special evening out for all of us. But luckily, the lovely wife, who was able to speak Croatian for us on all our behalf, ordered our desserts, as we decided to go crazy and overeat and drink too much. And so we drank our rosé, and once our desserts came, we had our desserts, drank up the last of the rosé bottle. and we completed both the wine bottles and got through a very large but very nice and deliciously tasty Italian meal of both an Italian starter, Italian main course meal, which were both fairly large, and as well as some nice medium-sized desserts. Eaten a whole day itself, as we generally eat a little bit less than that. But as it was a special evening, we decided to eat more than we normally would. And once we'd finished all the meals, the starter, main course and dessert, we decided the lovely Croatian lady asked for the bill, and then she subsequently paid the bill for our meals and the wine glasses. And once the bill was paid, we got up, put our coats on, all tipsy and a little bit wobbly after drinking quite a lot, probably on the verge of being drunk, and we walked out of the Italian restaurant and gave our thanking gestures to the waiter in the Croatian restaurant and walked out of the Italian restaurant. We all exchanged our goodbyes. Myself, lovely Sue, and David Scott exchanged our goodbyes to the owners of Nyx Potato and the lovely Debby Framzese, and we promised we were going to see them within the next couple of days to their home residency, where Debbie was currently staying over, to give them all a visit, and as well as giving Nyx Potato themselves a visit, and as well help them with feeding some stray cats. And so we decided, because we were a little bit drunk and increasingly tipsy, we just decided to get in the taxi to where we were staying. But it was Sue who we decided that Sue was to be dropped off first as to where she was staying over, and then David after Sue, and then myself being last. We all said, and as the drop-offs on the taxi cabs continued, we exchanged our goodbyes to each other and promised we would see each other the very next day for our adventure exploring the various interesting points of interest that could be seen in Zagreb in Croatia. And once the last stop came, I paid my taxi cab fare to the taxi cab driver and gave my thanking gesture to the taxi cab driver himself and said goodbye. Even though he managed to speak a little bit of English, though not completely fluent, he more or less had an understanding as to what I said. "I'm sorry if I don't speak your native language," I said to the taxi cab driver apologetically. "Oh, don't worry. No, don't worry. It's okay." He didn't take it personally, and that was all that counted. So we shook our hands and said our goodbyes after I paid the taxi cab fare, and then I left the taxi and subsequently walked into my hotel room. And once I walked into the hotel room, I walked over into my hotel room, I got undressed, I put my pyjamas on, I went on the computer a little bit to watch some YouTube and get some videos uploaded before midnight, Croatia time. Once that was all done, I read a little book, closed it up, I did turn out my lamp, and I subsequently went peacefully to sleep, dreaming of all the wonderful things we had done that very day from our Zagreb, Croatia excursion with David and Sue, and our meal out with David, Sue, Debbie and the owners of Nyx Potato, dreaming about what a wonderful day it had been on the very first day we had arrived in Zagreb in Croatia. The end. This is so far part 2 of the story. I think I did say before that there are going to be at least quite a good few more parts to come with our future fictional Croatian holiday story, which is involving myself, lovely Sue Vecchio and David Scott, primarily speaking that is, as well as also the mentions of the Nyx Potato owners and lovely Debby Framzese. My apologies if it's a little long, but I thought the second part, I thought I'd make it longer to make it a little more worthwhile, or slightly interesting, but if I did get lost for words, Dave, Brian, if you're watching, my absolute apologies. Same to you, Sue, and you as well, David. Thanks all indeed for watching, and thanks David and Sue if you two watched it, and thanks also to the Nyx Potato owners if you watched as well. And but I certainly would recommend subscribing to the Nyx Potato channel, David Scott's channel, and as well as lovely Sue's channel. Thanks everybody for watching, and I shall certainly see you in the very next episode. Ta-ta, another time. From Foxy. Oh.